President? No? Okay, very good.
Hello? If I could ask everybody to take a seat, our board president, Sheila Jackson, is about ready to start the meeting. I appreciate it. If we could ask our board members to come up to the stage, please.
Get behind the right name.
Oh, that's
Push it down.
Green light.
over there.
We're going to have you, as you know, Sheila's doing an intro, and then you're going to be doing the presentation. At the time when it's ready for you to do your presentation, we're going to flip to the PowerPoint, and you're going to see it right down there.
Great.
Have you used one of these before?
I have.
So you know, don't worry about any of that. It's just this side.
Yep.
So just down.
Just on the side, up
yep,
and down.
Up and down. You got it.
And so
Okay.
which is so if I want the next slide, I pull down.
You actually go up.
Okay.
Up for the next slide, down to reverse.
Okay.
Okay. Up for the next slide, exactly. And you can see what's going on right down there. Okay.
Good afternoon. Good evening, and I would like to welcome you all to the San Diego Unified School District Budget Town Hall Meeting. I want to thank you for taking time out of your very busy schedule to come and spend some time with us to discuss a very, very important issue. We have this hometown forum tonight to allow the public an opportunity to ask questions and share their suggestions for our proposed budget for the school year for 2009 and 10. We will begin this meeting with a presentation of the colors and the Pledge of Allegiance. Please post the colors. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you to the color guard. Thank you. Again, I would like to start this meeting by thanking all the parents and the members of the public for attending this meeting. I hope that you will find it valuable, this forum very valuable for you, and you learn more about our budget challenges that are facing our school district this year and in the years ahead. In addition to the members of the Board of Education who are present this evening, we are pleased to have our guests. A few of our state legislative members are here, and several of the staff members are here as well for those who are unable to attend this town hall meeting. First, I would like to thank Senator Chris Kehoe for attending. She has I know how hard she worked to really get here this evening, and she's going to be here with us for a few more minutes, so thank you. I appreciate that. I also like to thank State Assembly Member Marty Block for being here tonight. And I will allow both of them to make some comments in just a few minutes. The other state representatives who could not attend have asked their staff to be at this meeting tonight include Congressman Brian Brilbray, represented by Mark Schaefer. Hi, Mark. Thank you. Congresswoman Susan Davis, represented by Decanna Goodwin. Did I say that correct? Ms. Goodwin. Governor's Office, represented by Cameron Duckel. State Senator Denise Duchesne, represented by Acacia Farber. Okay. Assembly Member Nathan Fletcher, represented by Oscar Utera. His card's right here. His name wasn't on the paper, no? Okay, I'm sorry. No name, but I got it here. Thank you. And Mary Salas, State Assembly, represented by Francisco Estrada. And Hollingsworth was not on the list, but represented by Alan Mailing. We invited all of our state legislative, and Lori, yes, I'm sorry, Kirsten is here from Lori Saldana's office. Thank you. And it's great to have help and backup, and I love that. And we are all a team, and that's why we're all here tonight. We invited all of our state legislators here tonight, representatives, to attend this meeting so they can hear directly from the public here in the district as well about your concerns about the cut in public education, the funding and how it affects our school district if the legislation is not transitioned here in a little bit. Our agenda tonight, we will have a brief presentation about our current budget deliberations at the school district. I'm going to allow, prior to that presentation, our state delegation to have a few words. Following that, each of our board members will have an opportunity to make a few comments about the budget situation. Following the board members' comments, I will then allow the public to come up and share their thoughts and concerns, comments, questions, and or suggestions with us. I will plan to adjourn this meeting promptly at 9 p.m. I know that we have children and other things that we have to do in the morning, so I do believe in being very timely. So I would ask that as you come up to make your comments that you keep them short, brief, and to the point. At this time, I would like to ask Senator Christine Kehoe to come up and say a few words, please.
Thank you. I'm very happy to be here tonight, and I want to thank the president of the board, Sheila Jackson, for inviting me here tonight, and I want to thank all of you for joining us. I'd like to spend a couple minutes speaking because there is a lot going on here, and I don't want to just skip some important points. First, we are working very hard in Sacramento to try to resolve this budget crisis, and we know how important education funding is. I'm sure I don't have the numbers in front of me, but I'm sure I'm 100% education advocate as far as my voting record goes, because I understand that education is the gateway to a healthy, happy, productive life, and that it's an equalizer that allows all people to participate fully in our society when it's working right. The cuts we made earlier this year were made under very difficult circumstances. California was facing in the first quarter of this year a $42 billion deficit. And I heard from many education advocates, many parents, loud and clear that you were opposed to cuts in education. Others are opposed to cuts in health care, services to seniors, the disabled, and the poor. But the state's economic collapse has been much greater than anticipated, and the revenues are dropping faster than the legislature is making cuts. We are still experiencing a gap in our budget, a significant gap. In fact, our April 15th revenues are down about $8 billion. So we are not out of the woods, and I'm asking you to listen to me tonight so we can figure out a way forward. The budget I voted for in February closed an anticipated deficit for the next 17 months with the numbers that we had then. We made nearly $15 billion in spending cuts and temporarily increased taxes by about $12.5 billion. That includes the ballot measures that are coming up that I'll speak about in a moment on the May 19th special election. That includes a sales tax hike and increases to the vehicle license fee and the income tax. Our main point is to get California moving again, and we want to work with you on that. I checked with our Senate Budget Office today in anticipation of coming down to here tonight. I just flew down from Sacramento this afternoon. The federal stimulus money that's directed to the school district will be getting here in about 2 weeks, and I'm sure your staff has all the details. That will backfill more than the cuts in the current year. That's what I'm being told. So if it's something different, call me up, okay? The next budget year, federal stimulus funding will require the state to maintain its funding maintenance of effort, so we won't be able to pull out money and put this federal money in instead. Additionally, we're trying to give the district as much flexibility as possible while protecting across the state important programs such as those for special needs children. I want to spend a couple of minutes on the special election on May 19th because so much hinges on that for you who are here tonight. Our education funding is a big part of what will be hurt if those ballot measures fail. And I don't say that in a threatening way, but I couldn't come out here tonight and talk to my constituents and not let you know that there will be negative impacts if those ballot measures go down. And there are people who disagree. I know that. 40% of the voters favor the ballot measures, so the majority do not favor the ballot measures. I support all the ballot measures, and I want to spend a couple of minutes telling you why. The propositions 1A through 1F, with your approval, will bring additional new revenues to the state. For the first time in about 18 years, there'll be new revenues coming into the state. Those are tax dollars, but it's tax dollars we need. The propositions also call for a rainy day fund, which will stabilize our budget, and it will smooth out our boom and bust cycle by requiring a reserve fund in the budget permanently. The reserve will prevent spending spikes when we have extra cash, as we did during the dot-com boom, but it will also prevent sudden cuts when the economy crashes, as it has in late last year. It is a 10-year average. It will not ride on the immediate past, but it will smooth out the ups and the downs. I know it's not an easy vote. I'm just as frustrated by the budget stalemates in Sacramento as you are. But the May 19th propositions, if you approve them, we can take the first steps to restore California's fiscal health. And we can avoid the months of wrangling that we're all so familiar with that threaten San Diego teachers, needed public works projects in our neighborhoods, and further delays to California's economic recovery. California's budget chaos must end. We get that message loud and clear. But first we have to take these steps on May 19th to bring extra new tax dollars into our state for vital programs like schools, health care, and other programs. We have to get that rainy day fund in order to help smooth out our boom and bust cycles in our budget, which play havoc every year with the school budgets across the state. And I am asking you to join with me and so many other Californians who understand how important this vote is and vote yes on May 19th on those propositions. The state will be better off for it, and our fiscal health will go a long way towards being restored. So I want to close by thanking you, each and every one of you who came out on a weeknight to learn more about how we can help our education and how your children can get a better experience in the classroom with consistent funding. I also want to acknowledge the wonderful work that is done by our parents and teachers who are here tonight in working through the complicated funding issues that go along with our education nowadays. I know we're not done yet, and I'm very grateful for the dedicated school board members who are making every possible effort to do the best they can with the funding they receive from Sacramento, and we're going to continue to work with all of you. So I know I took a little extra time, but I really wanted you to hear how important the ballot measures were, and I'm happy to listen to all of your comments too. Thank you.
We will now hear from Assembly Member Marty Block.
Hey, thank you, Sheila. By the way, Chris Kehoe is a real star when it comes to protecting San Diego's interests in Sacramento. I mean, she's been there for us for more than a decade, and she holds very important chairmanship of committee, and we really look to her for leadership, the San Diego delegation does. You may know I'm brand new in Sacramento. Just a little quick history. I spent 26 years teaching at San Diego State University, was an administrator there as well. Spent 8 years on the San Diego County Board of Education, and the last 8 years I was president of the San Diego Community College District. So my interest, my career has been very much focused on education and educational needs. And when I got to Sacramento, the first thing they told me was, we've got a $42 billion deficit. You know, welcome to Sacramento, $42 billion in the hole. And you may know what $42 billion looks like. I didn't. I mean, I would know if I was missing $42, but I don't know $42 billion. So we did some research. And if we were to close all of San Diego Unified right now, and all of LA Unified right now, and close all of the CSUs, San Diego State and the other 22 campuses, and close the entire UC system, Berkeley, UCLA, UCSD, and shut down every prison in the state and let all the prisoners go. If we did all those things for a year, we would save about $35 billion. So $42 billion is almost an inconceivable amount, and that's how much we're in the hole. That's more than the whole budget of most states. So we've got a real serious problem. When Senator Kehoe talks about the propositions, none of us, frankly, really like these propositions. They do things that Democrats and Republicans agree on. We don't like some of the things they do. But if we don't pass the propositions, education will be one of the many services that will suffer. So like Senator Kehoe, I am urging that people think very carefully when they go and vote on May 19th, particularly when it comes to education. I think you're here because education is one of your top priorities. And Prop 1B will basically, what it says very simply, is that the money that education's been shortchanged by not getting the full amount they should be getting for Prop 98 over the years, that money will come to education. and it's $9.3 billion. So Prop 1B is very, very good for education. It only goes into play if Prop 1A also passes. So again, they're not perfect, these propositions, but we're looking at cuts that will just decimate health care and education and care for seniors and social services, in-home health care, things that we all care so deeply about if these propositions don't pass. So like the senator, like all of her colleagues in the Senate, the Democrats in the Senate, like all of the Democrats in the Assembly, we're urging that you vote yes on those propositions. Because, when it comes to kids, I mean, who deserves it more than the young people? Because they're going to be the ones, and we all know this, I'm preaching to the choir, that really contribute to the California of the future. So by shortchanging kids now, we're going to be destined to a future that is shortchanging all of California. So we need to get more dollars for these kids. Our teachers deserve more. I see some of the police officers who protect the schools and protect our kids. They deserve more. You've elected a great school board, and they need more to work with because they are faced, and I was on the community college board making cuts occasionally, they're faced with horrible, horrible choices, and they will probably be making some cuts, and the cuts will be much worse if these propositions don't pass. They need your help. I mean, you've elected them, but they need your help if they're going to help your kids and your kids' teachers and the other professionals and the classified staff who work with your kids. So really, you elected them, but we're really counting on you. The state, with its $42 billion deficit, we haven't given them nearly enough, but we don't have any more. I mean, it's a sad situation. People want a nice car, and unfortunately they lost their job, and now they can't afford anything but a used beater. Well, we want to provide the best for education, but right now we can't afford to. And your help is what's going to make the difference. I've got a lot more I could say, but I'm going to wait till we get to questions because there are a lot of other very fine folks who have want to have an opportunity to talk to you. So again, thank you for your attention. Please don't forget, if you don't get to me tonight, my name's Marty Block. I'm new. Again, I've been there just 4 more months than the rest of you. And if you want to get hold of me, my email address is marty@martyblock.com. That's my personal email address, not my assembly. Feel free to email me with any questions or concerns. Thank you all.
Thank you, Marty. Now, I think some of the representatives have some comments to be made. Is that true? Okay. Did you? Yes, come on. You want to wait? Okay, very good. I hope you have an opportunity to ask a few questions of our staff at the tables when we were setting up at the entry tonight before the meeting. Our staff will be available to continue answering questions even after we finish the meeting tonight, as well as some of the board members will be available as well. Now we'll have a brief budget overview that will hopefully put into context the budget challenges that the Board of Education is facing as we try to adopt a balanced budget for the upcoming year. I will now ask our Superintendent, Dr. Terry Greer, to come to do this overview. Thank you.
Thank you, President Jackson. It's good to see all of you, and I too would like to say thank you for coming out tonight. I think it's a great example of how much all of us care about the children in our school district and in our community. I'm going to be quick with this because I know your questions and our other board members' comments are going to be very important, but President Jackson asked me to just give you a flavor of what we're facing here in our district. You can see from the chart up on the board, and I'll do this quickly, that tracking back all the way to the 04-05 school year, you can see the top line, which is blue, was the district's expenses, and the bottom line, green, was the revenue. Now, like most school districts in California and across the country, we started seeing back in that time where our revenue and our expenditures were different, and so we had to make adjustments and cuts to try to bring those two areas into balance. And we were doing pretty well with that until about the middle or the end of the 07-08 school year, and you can see where the red dotted line is that runs north and south on the page, where all of a sudden you can see what happened to our revenue stream. It really, from the 06-07 school year, just started really tumbling in the state of California, and between at the beginning of this school year and the end of the school year, you can see what's happened. we have almost a 14% difference between our revenue source and our expenses. And quickly, we started this school year by cutting $53 million out of our budget before the year ever started, just to get off the ground. You can see how we spend our money on the next slide. And you can see that almost 87% of the resources we have go towards salary and benefits for our employees. I want to hasten to say that's not unusual. It's not unusual. We are a people-centered organization. And it's very important to all of us that we have quality teachers, that we pay them well, that we have quality administrators and support staff. It's extremely important. But you need to know where the majority of our dollars go. Now, you heard me talk about a little earlier that we cut $53 million out of our district at the beginning of the year. Well, after the governor's mid-year budget revise, we were told we had to make another cut. And so we had to cut an additional $46 million out of our budget. Almost $28 million of that came from unrestricted funds, which primarily meant that we could spend those dollars pretty flexibly. But almost $14 million of those came from restricted funds, which meant we couldn't spend those dollars for anything except their sole purpose. So, for example, when we had to take a cut in special ed, we had to simply reduce our special education budget. And you can see that was reduced by about $4.4 million. So when you start looking at where we started and where we stopped, you can kind of see that after mid-year budget cuts, we had $46 million in cuts. And to balance that budget and to fill that hole, you can see some of the steps our Board of Education took to address that. And they did a very good job. And I can tell you that we are very lucky to have our board. You have a group of people that are tremendously dedicated to our children. They're having to face some very tough, difficult times. You can see on the next slide, when you look at the coming school year's deficit that we project as a result from our state budget cuts, you can see that we're going to lose about $57 million in state funding as we stand right now today. You can see that the next column is about $28 million for what we refer to as a step and column increase. What that means is that our teachers and some of our other employees in the district, for each additional year you work in the district, each year you get an automatic increase that ranges about 1.5%. And across our district, that is about a $28 million increase. Our health and welfare benefits have gone up about $8.6 million. Our utility increase next year, over $3 million. We had a change in the law which would not allow us to charge the different federal and state grants that we receive in the district, which, quite frankly, is a lot of money. But we can't charge those grants indirect cost as we once could. So we're going to lose $5.9 million that we at one time were able to generate as a result of our administering those grants. And then you can see that we are going to increase our telecommunication cost about $155,000. That projects to about a $103 million deficit. Then a funny thing happened on the way to the forum in the next column. There's $44 million there that we're short because at one time we were getting enough money from the state in TIG dollars to be able to use those funds to adequately staff our schools. We were able to hire additional teachers to maintain the class size ratios that we had. So when we lost all the TIG money from the state, we no longer had those dollars to staff our schools. So now we're having to come up with another $44 million to be able to keep our class sizes at the averages that we would like and the averages that we have agreed to with our teacher unions and our administrative staff. So you can see as a result of this for the coming year, we're looking at $146,778,647 shortfall. Now, that's a lot of money, particularly after we just cut $100 million or almost $100 million out of our budget for this past year. So when you start thinking about those deficits and what we have to do to balance the budget, I think you can see that our Board of Education has some very, very difficult decisions ahead of it. I'm going to flip over just real quick because our time is short and go over to slide number 9 and just show you a bit of what the board has done to date to try to address some of these cuts. For next year, we are continuing to reorganize our central office. Last year, we cut 204 central office positions. Right now, we are reorganizing and reducing additional positions. We have reduced approximately 80 positions. We're still working to reduce even more this year for additional savings of about $6.1 million. You can see some other things that we've done. We've also cut almost $11 million out of central office budgets that are non-personnel related. And you can go down through and view the rest of these for yourself. But the board has identified almost $34 million to date of how we solve the budget shortfall for the coming year. I'm not going to get into a lot of the other options that the board has. You've read about them in the paper. None of them are pleasant. Some of them are painful. I don't know any of them that anyone would see as something that we really want to do. And no one wants to get into the kind of programmatic cuts that are in front of us. The last thing I would say to you, and Senator Kehoe touched on this a bit, this is what bothers me a great deal. Even if all the propositions pass, our staff estimates that we still could be facing a $40 million shortfall next year. Even if it passes, because you heard her say state revenues were continuing to nosedive. What is even more frightening, if that's not frightening enough, is that if the propositions fail, we would be looking at a minimum of a $90 million additional shortfall. $53 million at the beginning of the school year, $46 million in the middle of the year, $146 million starting the year, plus this looking us right in the face. It's just unacceptable. Our children have one time in school. That's why you're here this evening. I want to say thank you to our board members whose idea it was to have this public forum to shine the spotlight on the kind of critical problems that we're all facing together. There's no easy answers. There's no easy solutions. But frankly, even if these propositions pass, we are really facing really, really dire times in education in our state. Thank you.
Thank you. I'm now going to ask the board members to come and make a few comments or remain seated, whichever they decide to do. Thank you.
Well, I very much thank everybody for coming out tonight. This is a terrific showing, and we want to make sure that the most of this night is about listening to you and hearing the impact that these budget cuts are having every day in your lives. I want to very much thank Senator Kehoe and Assemblymember Block in particular, along with some of the folks who are here. We've talked a little bit about at school board meetings about critical decisions that the state had to make even after settling its budget in February about how the federal stimulus money was going to be allocated. There were people in Sacramento who were saying, hold on to the stimulus money, don't send it back down to the school districts. And there were people who were saying, when the budget cuts were made, we talked about this in February, large urban school districts like San Diego Unified and LA Unified and others in the state took a disproportionate cut. We got cut worse than the average school district around the state, and that's because some of these categorical programs that the superintendent was talking about that help low-income kids, help kids of color, help kids with special needs. We have a high percentage of kids who have a lot of needs in our district, and when you cut the categorical programs, that hurts us more than it hurts the average district. And the state had to make a decision about whether, in allocating the federal stimulus money, it was going to restore the share of the cuts to large urban districts like San Diego Unified, or was it just going to sort of parcel things out in a way that wouldn't have helped us a lot. And the difference that made for our district was millions of dollars. And I can say here tonight that the federal money that's coming into the state is both being sent right down to the districts. It's not being held up. And the money's being distributed in a way that sort of allocates our fair share back to San Diego Unified. And that is because the folks who we have here in the front row, but particularly Senator Kehoe and Assemblymember Block, were on top of that process every step of the way and made sure they did right by San Diego. So we do have great leadership in Sacramento. We're fortunate about that. I guess the only point that I would make as we think about the discussion that we're going to have, the last page in the PowerPoint that the superintendent passed out, page number 12, it's looking at rough estimates of what would happen if the ballot measures fail or if the ballot measures pass. And Senator Kehoe was very clear that whether or not the ballot measures pass, the state is still looking at an $8 billion additional deficit. If the ballot measures don't pass, that additional deficit climbs to $14 billion. However, if we're in a situation where we're facing either an $8 billion deficit, additional deficit for next year, which is likely, or a $14 billion additional deficit if the ballot measures don't pass, at that point, the folks in Sacramento have choices to make. It doesn't have to be the case that the way that additional $8 to $14 billion deficit is made up is with additional cuts to the schools. That is going to be up to the folks in Sacramento. It's going to be up to our members of the state Senate and Assembly members, Republicans, Democrats, and the governor. And one of the things that I think it's imperative that we keep pushing for, and we know we've got fighters on our side, and folks like Senator Kehoe and Assemblymember Block and our other state representatives, including some of our folks on the Republican side. But we've got to back up our state delegation to get up there and fight so that that budget is not balanced even more on the backs of our kids. That's what's in front of us, because this $40 million and $90 million, with a lack of leadership and a lack of commitment to our kids in Sacramento, those numbers become real. With fight and leadership and commitment to our kids, those numbers aren't what we're looking at right now. And so the push that I would, have tonight on our folks, and again, we're preaching to the choir here with some of our San Diego representatives, but our push has to be, you can't come back for more. $146 million on top of everything else that the superintendent talked about, that's enough. You can't come back to us for more.
Thank you so very much to everyone who came here today. I'm Catherine Nakamura. I've been on the board for 6 years, and I am very fond of saying, actually, that the state budget of California was going up like this, and then Catherine Nakamura was elected to the Board of Education, and it has gone down ever since. For 6 years, we have talked about this budget crisis in San Diego, in California. It seems to be a very difficult time. But during that period of time, my own thinking on this matter has evolved, and I've come to understand that, it takes two to tango. I want to thank our state representatives, Chris Kehoe and Marty Block, for coming, and for the rest of our representatives for sending, their representatives. I hope that you will listen. I know that what's happening up in Sacramento is not easy. There is a true budget crisis, not only, as we know, here in California, but throughout the United States, throughout the world. We're all struggling, and I think it is very important that we all work together and that we all make sacrifices and that we all take the time to understand the budget process when it starts, and it started far earlier than now. This board has already made decisions on this budget that have closed doors and have closed options for us. I'm very concerned about some of the decisions that we have made as members of the Board of Education, but they are what they are at this time. However, they are also based on a series of dominoes. We have had our state taxes come in. April 10th for property taxes. April 15th for income taxes has passed. The king is in his counting house counting all his money, and he has come up $8 billion short. Those are hard numbers, pretty hard numbers. But furthermore, we have, as a Board of Education, made decisions about accepting the early retirement and negotiated with our unions, which was a good thing, except for, I want to say at this time, the losses of experience and wisdom they were going to have as people leave our schools. I know several who have accepted the early retirement, and I'm going to be very sorry to see them go. But I'm not sure that it's enough. I'm not sure that we have enough people who have accepted the early retirement. If we don't have that here in San Diego, that paints us into a corner even further. We've also asked our unions to work with us on negotiations on some of these lists on Plan A and Plan B, but unfortunately they have declined the offer to help us very much with that. So that's a great deal of disappointment. It's not too late for them to change their decision. It's not too late for them to help us. But I think we all need to sit down and really understand what these issues are. I think that the propositions in May are tremendously important, but I'm sorry to hang my hat on that. I'm very concerned about whether or not they will pass or not pass. Senator Kehoe indicated that we don't have public support, but hopefully the voter turnout may be low. Hopefully we will have a representative sampling of people whose jobs and programs are at risk, and those will be the ones who turn out, and that maybe these propositions may pass. But again, that's another gamble. And then we'll turn to the Assembly, and we will ask the Assembly, once that fails, please don't cut us. Please don't cut us any further, because as Mr. Barrera said, we've bled enough. We have absolutely bled enough. Our schools' education system, the quality of our children's education is at risk. As we look at Plan B, what's on those programs and what is not, it says eliminate programs. It really doesn't talk about what those programs are, does it? It doesn't talk about arts. It doesn't talk about music. It doesn't talk about athletics. It says eliminate OSILE. OSILE is our 6th grade camp program. OSILE is the program where our children go to Balboa Park. OSILE is the program where our children, and visit our museums. OSILE is the program where they go to Old Town and learn about California history, something that as a native Californian I treasure very much. We don't do enough to talk about this wonderful state and about where all of this came from. But unless the Assembly finds some way of helping us, these are things that are going to be cut. The musicians that you heard playing outside, those instruments may be mothballed. We will lose the quality of our children's education, and no less than that hangs in the balance. I believe that you have taken a gamble as a Board of Education, and I'm not sure that I agree with it. I think that we need to we should have kept our options more open, but we are where we are today. And I'm sorry to see so many seats, this auditorium with 130,000 students in this district. This auditorium should be jam-packed, and parents need to pay attention, and they need to hold not only the Assembly, in Sacramento accountable, not only the federal government and the stimulus money and the stabilization money and how that money is designated, but they need to hold us accountable for how we make our decisions, because unfortunately some of the prioritization has already taken place. Tomorrow is May 1st. Parents for next year, and I have no doubt that next year we will be facing some of the same issues with regard to the budget. This budget process starts sometime about November. You need to hold us accountable. You need to pay attention, and you need to hold us accountable. Thank you.
I also would like to thank all of you for being here tonight. I think this is really great that you were here and taking the time to do this. I want to thank the musicians who on short notice came from Madison High School and Mira Mesa High, playing their music at the beginning tonight. Because this is just one little sample of what happens in our schools in terms of learning, reading, writing, in terms of music, athletics, the JROTC programs, and many, many more. And they're all very important for our education. When Mr. Brer and I came onto the board as the new members in December, we clearly stepped into the middle of a crisis pretty much from day one. But I also believe that a crisis is an opportunity. It is really an opportunity for us to order our priorities. It forces us to say what is most important to us, and that's what we have been working on. One of the fundamental things, and sometimes it's a cliche, but we are looking at what happens in the classroom and how can we protect our children in the classroom, the education that's happening right on the ground as opposed to the whole general structure of the district. Now, I realize that there are those who would look at a budget and they'd see a huge amount of money going to personnel. Our personnel are not a liability. Our personnel are an asset. And I think that needs to be made very clear. Now, just looking at numbers, it would be very easy to say, given the huge size of the budget shortfall we have, we could have pretty easily balanced our budget by laying off about 2,000 teachers. Now, what would that mean? I suppose we would have to break down walls in the high schools so that we could accommodate larger classes. I suppose in the elementary schools we could extend recess to a third or half of the day so the kids could rotate in and out of the classes. But this is not acceptable. The main thing that happens in our schools is working directly with the children in the classroom. We certainly need support behind them, but everything else comes behind that. Now, when we're looking at this situation, one of the reasons that I haven't been able to go everywhere as much as I would like in terms of talking about the various cuts is we first began looking at the issue of revenue. And this board has worked very hard to maximize the revenues within this very limited situation. We lobbied the federal government in terms of the stimulus money that came at that level to make sure that we had flexibility in the funds, which actually in some cases made $6 or $7 million of difference in one particular case. And then we've also lobbied at the state level and had a lot of cooperation, again, from Senator Kehoe, from Assemblyman Block, and from the other representatives who are here. Their representatives are here to make sure that San Diego is getting its fair share. And this is what we've done to maximize our revenues. Now, many of you have seen the cuts that are listed on the infamous Plan A and Plan B, which was certainly devised by this board with holding our noses as we faced a deadline of March 15th to balance the budget. But that was just the first step. We had from then until now and continuing on to work in a very deliberate fashion to look at what are all the impacts of the cuts and then make careful decisions about the best ways to do this. Now, I know if you're like me, your eyes can kind of glaze over sometimes when you see all the numbers and the dollars and the figures and going up and down and trying to figure out exactly what this means. We've looked at Plan A and Plan D. We need to keep looking. I want us to look also at Plan C and Plan D and look under every rock and every corner to find where we can save money in this district. We're not done looking for ways to save money. So I don't want anyone to think that that's where we're going to stop. The other thing I really am committed to is that we have numbers that are believable and understood by the public. And in order to do that, the first step is we need to have numbers that I can thoroughly understand myself. And we're working very closely with the staff, who's working very hard and cooperating very much with us. I know that they've seen that this board asks a lot of questions and more questions and more questions, but we are going to find out exactly how much we have, how much we are spending, and because the issue is not just cuts, the issue is how are we spending our money. And if you look at a budget, the saying is that this will show what the organization's priorities are. So we have a lot to do. I just want to emphasize that we are all in this together. It's easy to point the finger at the school board, at Sacramento, at teachers, at parents, at different groups, but we really need to stick together and united in this, both in the short run and in the long run. In the short run, you need to stay involved. You need to pay attention to what the cuts are. You need to voice your opinions. I really appreciate it. Sometimes people send a list, say, don't cut this, don't cut that. But I've also had emails from people who said, look, here's a way where I don't want this cut, but I think here's another way where I think we can save money. We need to be very creative in how we're doing this. This is what we need to do in the short run to get through this crisis. In the long run, we need to look at how we are going to fund education. Do we really believe in public education in California? We have a ridiculous system where 2/3 vote is required to pass a budget to fund our schools. This is one thing that we need to work very hard to get changed in our state. Who is going to change it? The people of California are the people who are going to have to change it. The other level we can look at is locally, in terms of if we really believe in our public schools, if we believe that San Diego can do a lot in public education, we can also look at separate taxes of ourselves that are going specifically to San Diego schools. So in these two ways, we can make our schools more stable. But again, I want to emphasize that we are all in this together. We need to work together, parents, teachers, community members, school board members, and state legislators. Thank you.
Okay. Well, I'm looking at page 10 of a sheet that it was a part of the PowerPoint. And as many of you know, I've been around a long time on the board, and I can honestly say this is the worst I've ever seen school budgets in the time I've been here. But I also believe that some of the things they've already done have put us in more jeopardy than we even realize. And the preliminary reductions on called Plan A have $37 million in class size increases. Well, you don't have to be a maths major to understand that if you increase class sizes, you don't need as many teachers, because the number of kids don't change. So you got to increase class sizes, then there could necessarily be fewer teachers used. But this board has decided that's not possible. I question some of our numbers, and I don't want to certainly minimize the fact that we've got a major problem. But one of the things that I believe in, and I think that the CSBA that I've been a member of for nearly 20 years, say that school board members should be truth tellers. And I don't want to hide the fact that Plan A has on it, the majority of the money there, or practically the biggest single item, is class size increases, but I don't see how you can save that if all the teachers that you currently have are still left on the payroll. That's unrealistic. Now, you know, I'm getting old, and I'm enjoying what I do less each year, because I think sometimes I've seen pretty sad things happening because of the level of funding that comes down from the state. But the one thing I don't want people to think is that if we somehow influence those folks across the way, that that's going to be the miracle that we can expect to save some of these things that we're going to have to do anyway. You know, I'd say that Plan A, which is supposed to show $100 million savings, will probably not come up with any more. And they can prove me wrong. I'll be glad to have that happen. In fact, I'd be glad if I'm wrong. But I don't think we're going to come up with $100 million savings on that Plan A. I think we're going to come up with less than half of it. But we still have the same deficit. So when you take all your options off the table, as some of us have done, you may end up in a situation where you promise things you can't possibly deliver. And so I'm not satisfied that Plan A will save us $100 million. I'd say maybe around the range of half. That doesn't change the fact that we still have a deficit. What it does is it makes further cuts necessary in order to get to the savings you need. 80% of this school district's budget is personnel. And if I need another $500,000 and I can't take it from personnel, it looks like it must be programs. So I'm pretty sure that we're not talking about not eliminating OSIL. I'm sure that the savings are overblown on the closing of small schools. This on Plan B. We've closed schools since I've been on this board. Mission Beach Elementary is one. And the only way we save it is by using it as offices, but we didn't gain anything by the closing as far as the real estate part of it goes. So all in all, I'm going to say I may be the resident cynic on the board, but I don't hold a whole lot of hope that the legislators are going to bail us out. And I hope, and I can't say that the San Diego delegation is not going to help us, but I think they will. But it takes a lot more than the San Diego delegation to raise hell in Sacramento. So this said, I'm pretty depressed about the fact that we've taken a lot of choices off the table and it's going to back us into the corner about cutting a lot of programs that we might have scaled down instead of cutting altogether. So I'm a minority on the board in some of the things we've done. I still think there's some hope, but I don't think it's going to be anything more than the possibility of raising revenues in some future time. And that doesn't look like what most people want in Sacramento. Thank you.
Thank you. I'll be very brief, and while I'm speaking, I will ask that representatives from the people that are not available to attend come to the mics and be prepared for your presentation. We are in an economic crisis. The future of California is at stake. If we do not educate our children, California has no future. So we do have tough choices to make, but we also have work to do. We asked you here tonight for a couple of reasons. Number one, we wanted to hear from you. We wanted to hear your thoughts. We wanted to hear your concerns. We wanted to hear your suggestions. Number two, we wanted to show you that we are working collaboratively with our state legislatures because they're working hard for us, and we wanted them to hear what we're hearing. But number three, we want to energize you, motivate you to go out here and do more work. If each and every one of us don't leave here tonight and go out and find 10 or 15 people that we can transition their thinking about what's on the ballot for May 19th, it is devastating for our state, not just our city, because our children do not just take care of San Diego. Our children take care of the state. And the finances that we have right now are on the backs of our children. And there's not a parent in this room that would not work day and night to protect their children. That's where we are right now. We have to work day and night to find a way to ensure that each and every child in our district is educated. That's where we are. Now, there's some things that we have to have, and people might get a little upset about that. But one thing we must have teachers. If we don't have any teachers, then our kids aren't going to come to school. I mean, it's just that clear. So we must have teachers. And we know that teachers are miracle workers. But we know that we need to provide them as much support as we can. But tonight, and I'm stopping now because I know that I need to hear from you, and we spent a lot of time talking up here. And those of you that have want to come up and speak, there's 2 mics right here. Please come up and speak. Those of you that don't want to come up to the mic, then we have staff that has cards for you. Wave your hand. They'll bring you a card, and we'll read those questions. But again, when you come to the mic, I'm going to ask you to be very clear about it is what you're speaking. You know, we don't need to hear a lot of stories. I know we get a little long sometime, but we'll ask you to be kind of brief. We have about a good hour for comments. But remember, we are on a mission tonight, and that mission is to protect the future of our city and our state. So with that, I'm going to ask any representatives that are here tonight that need to speak on behalf of their bosses to please come up and speak. Are there any here? Come on, please. Don't be shy. Don't be shy. Come on.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Francisco Estrada. I represent Assemblymember Mary Salas, who unfortunately could not be here this evening. But she did ask me to stop by and tell you that it's absolutely imperative that all of us, and excuse me, it's absolutely imperative that all of us come together. I mean, I want to echo what Assemblymember Block and what State Senator Kehoe said about approving the propositions. It's not the greatest solution in the world, but if they fail, it's going to be that much worse. We've already been underfunding education for the last 30 years, and in that time, our educational system has gone from first to worst. People say we cannot raise taxes, get rid of waste, fraud, and abuse, get rid of, the overhead. But we already have one of the largest numbers of students per teacher in the country. We already have the fewest nurses, the fewest counselors, the fewest principals, the fewest vice principals already of any state in the United States. If we don't turn this around, the future of our state is at stake. Thank you.
Thank you.
My name is Cameron Durkle. I'm with the governor's office here in San Diego. I just wanted to make a few brief comments. One is I fear that the crises really are imagined that we have in Sacramento and at the federal government, people have become numb to what these numbers mean. And when revenues are up, we have a budget crisis. When revenues are down, we have a budget crisis. And I don't think people realize that today we are in a real crisis. We actually have been. This has been growing for a few years. The state has an underlying structural deficit, a growing operational deficit, and that was even before the economic crisis. And then add to that, we've begged, borrowed, bonded, all these different things over the years to make the budget work. Now with the revenues falling through the floor, we have a cash flow problem that we've had over the last few months. The strategies to deal with that obviously are very different to get short-term cash flow into the state than dealing with closing an operational or a longer-term deficit. I think the governor was very appreciative of getting a 17-month budget deal, but unfortunately the revenues are still going down, and we have about an $8 billion budget gap, as you've heard, between just a few months ago when that budget was signed and where we are today, or over those next 17 months, or now it'd be about 14 months. That is important to know that this is real. I also appreciate the leadership on the board and with the superintendent because they're at a disadvantage. Every district throughout the state, and I don't think most people realize this, every district throughout the state has to come up with their budget before they know what the state budget is. That's something that ultimately, from my personal statement, we need to look at and how to bring those, how to sync those. It's not easy. It's an easier statement, easier said than done. But how to bring those into sync, because clearly that's one of the problems in a normal budget cycle. That's a problem here. It creates even a greater catastrophe. So I know we are all open to any questions you have. Appreciate what the proactive nature of this meeting, and I did want to reinforce that this crisis is real. We have what the budget they were looking at that The governor signed just a few months ago. We had a $42 billion, over those 17 months, a $42 billion budget gap and a projected $87 billion in revenues. And of course, that scenario has gotten worse. So to give you some idea of what the state's facing, I also think we've grown numb to what these numbers mean. Since we're dealing with education here today, $1 million is about 11.5 days in seconds. $1 billion is 32 years in seconds. $1 trillion is 32,000 years in seconds. It was an interesting way of conveying the distance between these numbers. It's not just a little notch up. We're talking about massive dollars at the federal and state level that we are in need. We need to fix those issues. If the state does not have the tools, these are imperfect initiatives that came out of a budget process, so they're muddied in much the same way. But if the state does not have those tools, then the problems get exacerbated. And again, just as with the district, let's assume that I'll be conservative, about 70% of the state general fund is spoken for with autopilot spending. That leaves 30% left to fix that 42, perhaps 50 billion or so gap in a projected 87 billion. So the problems are real. We need your engagement, your support. We need you to get friends out, educate your friends, not only on the district budget, but on the state budget, and be solution-driven. Be solution-driven. So thank you very much, and thank you for being here.
Thank you. Most certainly. Most certainly. Can someone come to the mic over here? Okay.
Good evening. Can you hear me or turn up? My name is Jeff Perwin. I'm the Vice President of the Town Council in Linda Vista. Thank you for coming out. An anecdote, we had Apple Computer, one of the executives sitting behind me, and I was suggesting Apple should buy the state of California. During the recession, their revenues are booming and their stock is going through the roof. One of the things I'm doing, which we're sometimes missing, is we're not discussing where the loss of revenues are coming from. You know, what happened? Where did we lose these $42 billion, and how can we restore that? We spend a lot of time trying to figure out how to raise taxes and cut services. The government's responsibility is to provide services for the people, not raise. And sometimes we wonder why we keep raising taxes and we're getting less for our money. In the city, I have been proposing a change, because I'm on the rec board, and I went down before the rec board, is that we don't have to cut services. If we increase the capabilities of our park and rec services, we could generate an unlimited amount of revenue. What LA does is allowing people to use those facilities for yoga classes and photography classes and the rest, and streamlining. And doing like Mesa College has done is they produce a quarterly booklet on all their courses, and we could do that in our park and rec systems and increase revenues. Because if I taught a class in photography and I had 20 students there and it's $5 each, I'd raise $100 and I could give the city $40. And if we had 3 classrooms, we could generate $120, and that's more than enough to pay for a staffer there, and we could keep things open. Other points is I'm the director of the International Student Program. The students generate from $500 million to $1 billion. And if we did promotions around the world and I could get more students here, we can inject another $1 billion in economy money into San Diego and increase the revenues. So it's just that's the two things to look at. If someone could address where the loss is in our revenues and what can we do to restore that, that would be my question. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you. Anyone want to? Thank you. Yes, ma'am.
Just, I can address the loss in the state budget to a certain extent. I'm not an expert on it, but our personal income tax that you paid on April 15th, that is down significantly. We all know car sales are down significantly, sales tax from car sales. So these things add up. The state's revenues are heavily reliant on personal income tax and sales tax. Property tax, which is more stable, is a smaller portion. So when sales and income go down, so does the state's revenues. But your ideas on using our facilities better and attracting more people into the community are good and creative, I have to say.
Okay. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Anastasia from Senator Ducheney's office. First of all, I just wanted to thank everyone again for coming out. The senator, sorry she couldn't be here. I just wanted to make two really quick points. The first thing is that hadn't been mentioned that I just wanted to say is that there's no point in passing 1B if 1A doesn't pass. 1A provides the funding for 1B, so that's an important thing to keep in mind, that they go hand in hand. So that money from 1A, from that lottery, would be dedicated to the schools for 1B. So that's an important thing to know. The other thing is, just to break down some of the numbers based on the analysis and the LAO budget analysis, is if 1C is defeated, there's a shortfall, an additional shortfall of $5 billion. So that's just breaking down the numbers by the actual propositions. 1C would be $5 billion additional budget deficit. 1D is an additional over $500 million, so something to keep in mind. And those are just some of the numbers. 1E is $227 million. So just breaking it down by the propositions, that's how they add up to that additional almost $7 billion.
Thank you. I'm going to give you the first question here, and then I'll go over here. The first question that was written was, why is legislature afraid to address sacred cow or property tax increase to level out this chaos? So for my state people.
I think property tax is set at the county level. So that would have to be done on a county-by-county basis, and now under propositions passed by the voters, it would have to be, if it goes towards a specific issue, it can be it's a 2/3 vote, and if it's a increase in taxes, and if not, it's a 50% vote. So a property tax increase would have to go before the voters to be approved. And as we can tell, people don't like to vote to raise their taxes.
Okay. All right. You go ahead.
Hello, my name is Aaron Bergen. Proud parent of AJ Bergen right there in the blue, and got another one in the oven, so just wanted to say hi. Just a couple of quick things that I wanted to mention. The guy that just left, I mean, he touched on something that, has been absent from this entire budget morass, at least from an observer's point of view. I'm a reporter by nature. I work for a newspaper in Riverside County. And the one thing we always talk about is the lack of creativity in these budget discussions. There's always, on one side, you say, raise, raise, raise. The other side says, cut, cut, cut. It seems that ideology has killed that creativity, and we've got to get away from that. Secondly, what I wanted to mention, in our discussion at Florence Elementary School, we found out a very disturbing, revelation in regards to another thing that handcuffs our local districts. That as state legislators, you have an active role in trying to undo. There's about $9 to $10 million annually that's locked in for textbooks that cannot be used for anything else except for renewing textbooks that, pardon my French, don't really need to be renewed. You don't need to renew a mathematics book, an English book. Those things stay the same. So all I'm saying is I understand that there are powerful lobbyists in Sacramento that don't want to see that happen. My industry has been criticized from day one for not modernizing, for not being more web-driven. I think that the textbook industry needs to also be held accountable and also needs to modernize. So what I would like to ask you today is, if that is the case, if it is going to take some type of state amendment, whether it be at the Assembly or Senate level, to undo that rule that handcuffs these people as they attempt to do their job, I humbly submit that you do that the same. Take that to Sacramento, make it happen.
Go ahead, Marty.
I've already spoken with some of your board members and folks who advocate for San Diego Unified in Sacramento, and I've committed my office to working and doing whatever we can to increase flexibility of this money. I think it's extremely important that when dollars come to the district, the local board has control over how those dollars are used. So I agree with you, and I think you'll see the legislature working in the future to make sure that that money is freed up for whatever the needs are at the local level, be it more teachers, be it better supplies in the classrooms, computers in the classrooms, whatever. You mentioned also just creativity and not just cutting and worrying about raising taxes. A couple other things. Some of you who have lived in San Diego for the last year saw during my campaign too many commercials where I was standing by a whiteboard and I said that California corporations stash millions of dollars in the Cayman Islands. I don't know if any of you remember that, but well, now that I'm there, I've got to tell you, the Franchise Tax Board tells us that we lose about $150 million, the state of California does, to these shell corporations that are in the Cayman Islands, Virgin Islands, other tax havens. I do have a bill this year, and I'm sure the legislature will approve it down the road, and hopefully the governor will sign it, that will close that tax loophole. And we're also hoping to have a resolution to ask the federal government, which is really where it should be done if we can get the feds to do it, to close that tax loophole. And President Obama has already said that he favors that. Now, $150 million when you got a $42 billion shortfall doesn't solve all of our problems, but we could do a lot of good in San Diego Unified School District with $150 million. So we are working on some creative things as well.
Okay, thank you. Yes, ma'am.
I'm a parent volunteer. I'm coming to you from the local San Diego Unified Council of PTAs, and I'm a working mom, and I have 2 school-age children, and I have 1 on the way. So I wanted to speak sort of early so I can get home and rest. I wanted to mention that PTA is in support of Prop 1A, Prop 1B, Prop 1C. We are not in support of 1D, and we are in support of 1E, and we have taken no stand on 1F. The reason we have concerns about 1D is because that concerns the tobacco tax money, which when it was approved by the voters was specifically meant to go for the early childhood education efforts of the First 5 Coalition. So we have real concerns that scheme's going to be diverting money away from that. But the other ones we do support. I want to bring to everyone's attention that I believe we have about, 6 million or 6 billion public school children in the state of California. So this is a huge undertaking. It's going to involve a lot of money. But I know that parents out there are willing to spend money on their children's education. People spend money on private education. I, as a parent with my children in public education, would be willing to spend more. I would be willing to spend more in taxes for other children's education because this is very important. And Marty Block, you mentioned that we can't afford a nice car. It's a beater we're giving you, but when we're talking about the cuts that's coming down the pike and that we've already had to deal with, we're talking about a car that might not go at all. So this is a real big issue. So I want to also bring your attention to prisons. I don't know the numbers offhand, but isn't it true that a prisoner in prison, more is spent on them than a child in school?
That's true.
I think that's not acceptable. The children are our future, and they deserve more than prisoners. So.
Thank you. Okay. A question from the audience. It sounds like the teachers union is not going to have their members share in the pain. How did the board allow this to happen?
Yeah, it's again incredibly irresponsible right now to try to divide this community. We stay united as teachers, parents, everybody who cares about our kids. Nobody fights harder for our public education in this state than our teachers' unions. Teachers are absolutely sharing in the pain right now. And we're in a conversation right now about trying to figure out some solutions with our teachers' union. So trying to divide us, with our teachers' union is so stale. People don't buy it, and it's enough of that. It's time to unite ourselves as a community.
I just want to add, however, it would be nice if they would work with us, because I do.
And I would like to add, just very briefly, that it's very important that we be careful about public statements, because we are currently in negotiations with the teachers union. We are in discussion and conversation about various issues, and no final conclusions have been reached at this point.
Okay, please.
Hi, my name is Bailing Shaw, and I'm speaking tonight as a parent of 2 children in the SD Unified School District. I'm emboldened by Mrs. Nakamura's suggestion that we, the public, hold this school board accountable, and I was also encouraged by Mr. Evans's comment that we need to help you all find places to cut. Well, the thing is, we don't know the things that we don't know, and I was wondering whether the board could help us to help you by telling us where we could find a copy of the SD Unified budget. And I don't mean the beautiful document that shows per school expenditure. I mean a line item, detailed budget of revenue and expenditures for this school district.
Okay. Thank you. I think that should be available on the website. I mean, what we have so far, we're working on the other part of it. Now, the next budget will not be approved until the middle of June. But what we have right now should be available on our website. So it's line item yet, but certainly what we have is available there. And we're working on a line item budget. Yes, ma'am.
Hi, my name is Kathleen Ferrier, and I'm a mother of a kindergartner at McKinley Elementary in North Park. I also live in North Park, and I have a 3-component kind of question. First, I'd like for you all to confirm that the money that comes out of the state for the schools is divided between money for maintenance and operations and money for special programs. And I'm not sure if that refers back to the dedicated and non-dedicated. 2, if that's the case, why is that the case? And 3, can we provide some more flexibility? Because Proposition S passed last year, and that provides ongoing funds specifically for maintenance and operations of our schools in San Diego. So why do we need to rededicate or dedicate additional funds to that when we're hurting in the special programs? Thanks.
Superintendent.
Senator Kehoe said she didn't have any idea. I'm not sure I do either. We receive monies from the state that are restricted, which means they can only be spent for certain things. Or we receive funds that are unrestricted, and that means you have great flexibility in how they are spent. Now, in my time in Sacramento talking to different lawmakers from both parties, there seems to be an interest in protecting certain programs. And I'm not saying that's wrong, I'm not saying that's right, but that's what's there. And when that happens, the funds are restricted and can be only spent for a particular purpose. And we have been lobbying very, very hard this year. Our board has, our staff has, to have as much flexibility as we possibly could have. Some of those dollars, for example, go to construction, and I understand that. One of the things that we've talked about and tried to lobby for is if we could just simply spend the interest earned on the construction dollars and have flexibility on being able to spend those dollars to support teaching in the classroom and our support staff and other costs, we think would be a tremendous asset.
We were told no on that. Okay.
Is that it?
Yes.
That's all I know.
Yes. Okay.
Do you have another?
Thank you.
I mean, do you have another question?
Well,
when you say, I don't think it comes down.
I may not be stating it correctly, so in that sense, I'm just I have bad luck. But what I understand from hearing limited discussions on these issues is that the money, for example, if there's more money in the operations and maintenance budget, which seems to be the case, then those monies cannot be spent on the programs.
That is true.
So why can we not have more flexibility there? Because again, I think that Proposition S, the very fact that that was passed and that money is going towards operations and maintenance, it seems to me that there's a lot of money sitting in that pot.
That's one of the things that we're lobbying for in Sacramento. One of the thoughts were, and the reason that we had those categorical funds was so that we could protect certain items, and the maintenance fund that you referred to was ensure that our schools are maintained. But I think it was this board also, when we saw that funding, we went and asked, well, can't we go over here to maintenance if we just pass Proposition S and use some of those fundings? And we were told no. Right. We have not given up, but it is a state law or an ed code that is restricting those funds. But that is true. The monies that comes for maintenance or for facilities can only be spent for those items.
And if I can speak to the Proposition S money in particular, at the Community College District, we passed 2 propositions when I was president of the board there, raised over $1.5 billion for new college buildings. And we went out and told the voters before they voted exactly how those dollars would be spent. And had we told the voters they'd be spent to maintain our current buildings, I fear we wouldn't have gotten the votes we needed. So we had very good projects, future-oriented projects, and again, the community college I don't think is any different than the proposition here. You then can't take those dollars where the voters approved them for one purpose, and as much as you may need them, and we need them badly, you can't then use those dollars for a different purpose. So if that gets your question, that's part of it.
Well, and if I can chime in here as the person who led the board as Proposition S was being passed and who talked with the voters specifically. That is, I think, a very common misunderstanding and confusion. Maintenance, custodial, landscaping, maintenance, those sorts of things are a very different color of money. And Proposition S is a bond measure specifically for capital improvements. It's a very, very different type of expenditure, and we did make a solemn promise to the taxpayers of San Diego that they would be spent in capital expenditures and not on custodians and not on landscaping. There's a different pot of money for that we use, and that's a very common misperception. And I until I got on this board, I have to admit I also shared that. So I hope that helps. It doesn't make it better, but I hope that explanation helps.
Yes, go ahead,
I thought the question was a little different. Maybe I misunderstood. I thought she understood clearly what Prop S dollars were for. I thought the question was, why can't we spend some of the dollars that the state gives us for maintenance and upkeep of the building? Why can't we have the flexibility to spend some of those dollars since we have $2.1 billion that was approved to upgrade our facilities? I thought that was your question, and that I thought was directed to our representatives. Why don't we have more flexibility in the state dollars we get for maintenance of facilities and those kinds of things?
And we're asking for that. Thank you. Yes, sir. Thank you for waiting.
Thank you. My name is Roy Stacker. I'm a father of 3 girls. I have a first grader at Pacific Beach Elementary and 2 that will be entering that school soon. I believe in public schools, and I think it's the government's one of the government's fundamental obligations is to properly fund the schools and properly educate our children. I appreciate the work that you guys are all doing. I know that it's hard and you are facing tough choices, but to follow up on a question that was asked before, everyone seems to be endorsing all of the propositions. Proposition 1D, the way I read it, it diverts money that's already earmarked for schools to be used for other government obligations. And so my question, I guess I'll direct it to Senator Kehoe, is how does taking money away from schools benefit the education system? And I have one other question, or a couple directed to Superintendent Greer, and then I'll let them be answered. First off, the material is not on the website. There is no line item type budget material. You cannot find that stuff. I've looked. Are the financial statements, are the budgets that are being done, have they been reviewed and audited by outside independent auditors? And if so, who are they? And have the proposed plans, A and B, been audited, checked, and rechecked by outside and independent auditors? Because at least Mr. DeBeck doesn't agree with the numbers there. And then my last question to you, Superintendent Greer, is given the dire nature of the circumstances that everybody seems to agree on, and even with the propositions passing, the one thing that I haven't heard is how to close the budget. And to me, I'm not an accountant, I'm not a mathematician, it appears impossible. So I would ask the question, hopefully this isn't going to happen, but how seriously has the district considered bankruptcy? And I'll sit down.
Good questions.
I'll talk about that. Proposition D temporarily moves some first five money. And my understanding is the first five money funded by the tobacco tax is for early childhood education, preschool. We're taking it for, I don't know, is it 2 years? 2 years. We're taking some amount of that, not the whole program, a portion of it, for 2 years, and we're putting it into child health. So it will not be in the education program. You're right about that, but it is taking care of a serious need for young children, and it's temporary. Will it be put back? Temporary, yes, it'll go back. I don't know if we'll backfill the loss or if we'll just resume the funding to first five as it is today. So it truly does not. I don't know. I'd have to check, and it would also be on your voter pamphlet.
And it's interesting because none of us here at all want to cut any money out of 1D. I mean, it does very important things. But so many speakers have talked about flexibility. And 1D is a type of categorical expenditure. It tells us particular early childhood programs. So the idea of, first five is focused on particular early childhood programs. 1D would say, let's take that money and make it more flexible, basically, so it can be used to backfill some of the loss to school districts, also helping kids. Again, it's a tough choice to make, and a lot of good people will be voting against 1D, and I understand that. But I think it's important to free up that money, make it more flexible so the district can use it.
Okay. Superintendent Greer.
Thank you. I promise you I'll go back tomorrow and take a hard look at our web page, and if it's not there, we will get it put up. And in addition to that, if you or anyone would be interested in coming down and sitting down, we'll get you a copy of the budget. I'll have a staff member that would be glad to sit with you and try to explain and go over it with you. The budget is audited on an annual basis for the Board of Education by an independent auditing firm here in the community. We do also have an oversight committee. In addition to that, the numbers that we're talking about here tonight, we have asked FICMAT, which is a very respected organization here in the state, to come in and verify the numbers and to offer a third-party opinion. We've also been working with the Portland Group, which is also an independent consulting group, to take a look at our numbers as well. So we think that we concur with you that the numbers have to be transparent, they have to be accurate. And I can tell you that's also, with all due respect to our represented members of government here, the numbers coming out of Sacramento change on a weekly basis, and sometimes they change on a daily basis. And if you've never tried to do a budget before you know what your state revenue is going to be, you ought to try that sometimes too. It is horribly frustrating for us. Sometimes we're into October and November before we get a state budget. And so it's a fly-by-night, try to do the very best you can given the situation you find yourself in with moving budget projections from the state. I know that's not a good excuse, but that's what happens.
Yes, sir.
I'd like to, if I can add to that.
You never want to consider bankruptcy. The way the California system is structured is the board has a fiduciary responsibility to bring its budget into balance with its revenues. And if it's unable to do that or unwilling to do that, then there is a provision in our state government codes which calls for the district to be taken over, usually it starts with the County Office of Education and ends up with the state overseer that removes the superintendent and the board from any kind of input and the board from any decision-making process.
I'd also like to bring the gentleman's attention to the fact that we have an audit and finance committee and that they select a certified CPA firm that actually, since you are an accountant, does the annual audit, and that is available as well, which might be something you're more familiar with.
Comment.
Superintendent.
Yes, sir. Thank you for waiting.
I misspoke earlier. The shift on the first 5 funds is not for 2 years, it's for 5 years. So it is a significant shift, but the shift money goes to health and human service programs that serve children, including Medicaid, foster care, child care subsidies, and preschool programs. So it's in the same area, but it is a shift. I just want to be clear, it's for 5 years.
Okay.
Yeah, but some of the first 5 isn't education either. It's nutrition and preschool and things like that.
Okay. Yes, sir. Thank you again for waiting.
I'd like to point out first and foremost that both the Republican Party and the Democrat Party have come out against all the propositions. I don't want...
Let me just correct you. That's not true. Democratic Party, the recommendation just this past weekend at the Democratic State Convention, the recommendation in committee was that they approve all of them. On the floor, they took a neutral position. So I don't know what the Republican Party's position is.
A neutral position as in no position.
Democratic Party is neutral.
Okay. Republicans supported it, spent a lot of money, and now they're against it. I don't trust any one of them. Question. If we vote yes for these propositions, you're guaranteed to get another 2 years of our tax money, which is a total of 4 years, $16 billion. You're guaranteed to get that money from me. What guarantees do I have, since the performance of schools in America is ranking near the bottom amongst the world? What performance indicator guarantees are you going to give me if you're guaranteed my taxes? Yeah. 30 years now of underperformance. You've been in the Assembly or the Senate for 10 years? That's a long time to work with the education.
9. But you're right. Our schools have been underperforming, but I do think they're getting better. The sales tax increase would be for a total of 5 years. And you're right. We need to raise our accountability standards. California is working on that all the time. You know, we have, whether you agree with them or not, the high school exit exam. There's programs to intervene with kids that are at risk for dropping out. There's programs for English language learners and communities that are at risk for higher incidence of dropout. It's a constant struggle, and I think
there's been a 36% increase, and if you adjust for inflation, say 18% since Arnold Schwarzenegger took office in 2004, and the enrollment's been flat. So we're talking about a huge increase in the budget, but the performance has not gone up very much. I think there's not a whole lot of confidence of the people in the legislature's ability to fix the schools.
Well, you know, it's more than just money, and it's more than just the number of students. It's keeping students in the classroom and having a rich environment, and reducing our dropout rate and boosting our numbers for college and career technical. So. There are, a lot of people that are focused on this in Sacramento. The sales tax money is not going to be directed only to education. There are other services that the state provides that also need funding. Healthcare services, transportation, and when we talked about whether there should be, how much goes to operations and maintenance and how much goes to education programs, the fact is there isn't enough money to cover all of it now, no matter how we sort it out. And what we're trying to do is give the local school districts the flexibility to put it where it's needed at the local level.
And just to wrap up the answer to your question, I think that the state provides the funding. The accountability goes to the local boards. And I think that if the local boards, which is why you elect them, if we're not doing what we're supposed to do, then you don't elect us for our next term. California does have some high standards, but one thing that we do in our country when we compete against other countries, we educate each and every child. It doesn't matter what child comes to our door. We will take them in and we will educate them. Some of the people that we are compared to, that is not the case. They only educate the best and the brightest.
Well, that's a common argument, but even our best don't compare to the best. You know, there's not really any room for excuses.
Yes.
You know,
I agree. There is room for improvement, but I just want to let you know the accountability for those scores belong on the backs of the board here. Thank you for waiting, ma'am.
My first comment is a suggestion, I guess, for saving money, and it would be the California state testing. That I think, you know, if you suspended it just during this crisis, even, it would save a lot of money. And I know there's no child left behind, and I know that I'm a teacher, and I know that we use those records to help us teach, you know, the next group that comes along. But I just think that's a lot of money that is a place to save. And then to the San Diego board, this is a clarifying question. I think we are losing teachers. I think we are losing our teachers who are going to be retiring. And at my school, we have 2 young teachers who just got a 1-year contract. And both of those 2 teachers are going. So, and great teachers, these 2 young people. So we're losing our most wise and our most energetic. And so to say that San Diego is not losing any teachers is not quite true. And so I don't know, Mr. DeBeck, if you think that, you know, your money, you're worried about that 90% or 80% of the personnel budget, but we are going to be losing some of that money too, and I just think that that's really a shame. So
thank you for waiting.
Hello, I will try to be very fast. I was scrambling notes as you were talking. First, I would like to thank the board for returning full-time principals. My school was one of the ones that was slotted to get a half-time principal. We have 104 IEP/special needs students out of 405 students. That's a quarter of our population that was going to be kind of left hanging with a half principal, 2.5 days. As far as the textbook adoption, we need new textbooks. I'm sorry. The phone book comes every year new to your doorstep. I have 7-year-old math textbooks. In 2003, the United States was 21 out of 30 countries in math. In my 3rd grade textbook, it calls the commutative property, the grouping property of multiplication. If you want those 3rd graders to succeed in math, they need a good, up-to-date, current textbook. Imagine your favorite book you have at home. My kids touch their textbooks every single day, 180 days, for 7 years. Imagine what my textbooks look like. I understand we have budgets and we want to spend that money somewhere else. If I don't have textbooks, how can I do my job? 3rd grade is a transition between learning to read to reading to learn. My kids have 7 textbooks in their desk. Now, if you want to cut the textbook money, every 4 to 6 weeks, the literacy department sends me a 75 double-sided document on how to use my literacy textbook. That goes to every single teacher, at least K-6. That's a lot of money. Who's writing that document? Who's copying that document? Who's sending it out? I have 6 teacher's guides that go with my literacy series. I don't need another 150-page document to tell me how to use it. If you want creativity, last year when we had this budget crisis, Dr. Greer put up on the website saying teachers were the most creative and the staff was the most creative. I can make just about anything you want out of a paper towel tube. And they asked for the teachers and staff to present suggestions, ways to cut money. They did. I read those. There were some great ones. Principals acting as substitutes in the classroom 2 days a month. We'll keep them more in the loop, what's really happening with our kids. That will save almost $300 a month at every school. I know OSAL is important, but you know what? 4th grade goes to OSAL in Balboa Park. That's 3rd grade standards. We need to teach the California standards as they were presented. 3rd grade, third grade's the one that studies San Diego history. Old Town's in San Diego. 5th grade goes to Balboa Park. Every Tuesday, Balboa Park has free and open museums. If our 5th graders need to go there, their parents can take them on a free Tuesday. 6th grade, I believe in 6th grade camp, my best memories, but it needs to be more standards-based. That's a lot of money we can cut. Why are we not charging for buses? My niece and nephew goes to school at Lakeside Unified. She pays almost $1,000 for her children to go to the local, her neighborhood school because it's a mile and a half away. I understand not all kids can pay, but some can. If they have the ability to pay, why don't they pay? Parents are sitting right here, she was, saying she'd be willing to pay. You want your kid to go on the bus? And if you have the means, you should have to pay.
Okay. Thank you.
And my last comment is, I thank you, Mr. Burr, for saying you supported the teachers, but when Ms. Nakamura was talking about the teachers union, you were shaking your head. Actions speak louder than words.
Okay.
Thank you.
Yes. Thank you for waiting.
Hi. My name is Steve Cook. I have one child in elementary school at McKinley in North Park. I've got one more who'll be entering McKinley next year. I've got 3 comments, and a couple of them have questions attached. Number one, I think to anyone who thinks that increasing class sizes doesn't mean that teachers share the pain, I think you're dead wrong. I think you're dead wrong. I totally support the teachers, and even more than that, I really think we need to fight to preserve the class sizes in our classrooms. It's so critical to our kids. I'm worried. I've got a preschooler who's going into McKinley, and I worry about the impact of that on him. And my wife and I mean, we're devastated. Actually, we're naive that public school is such a roller coaster in this state. It's really unfortunate. Naive, really feeling that and thinking, gosh, we really want to support public schools, but do we need to look at other options because we cannot sacrifice our kids? Number 2, I really love all the ideas that people have shared about getting creative. I totally agree with the ideas that, or just the general theme that we need to look harder. We need to find more ways to solve this problem than cut or don't cut. The testing, I think, is a great idea. You know, the thing that I would offer up is there's a lot of money out there, but it doesn't feel like the control of where the money is spent is where it belongs. The schools and the community that owns the schools, that live in the area, that sends their kids to the schools, should really be deciding where these dollars are spent, not the state. So that's number 2. Let's let the schools really decide where the money is spent. Put the power in the control of the community, and the community will do what's right for them. The third point, and my last point, is I do appreciate the state legislators and other legislators that are fighting for education, but I will say this: it's not enough. It's not enough. We need to stop the cuts. I personally, I will get out there and vote. I will get out there and rally. I'll do the things that I need to do, but I really go back to a comment the gentleman made a few minutes ago is, where's the guarantee from our legislators that if we do what we should do for our schools, if we vote, if we volunteer in the classrooms, if we give back to our schools, that our legislators are going to stand with us and they're going to guarantee that our kids will have a consistent education, not worrying year to year about whether, there's going to be a good teacher or whether there's going to be, 25, 30 kids in the room, or whether they're going to have a math program or a science program or a music program. I think it's just ridiculous. And one thing I would love to hear from each of the legislators here is if this $8 billion, gap, or actually it is a real gap, if these propositions don't pass, I didn't hear from any one of you that you would not go deeper. You would not stop the bleeding on education. No one said they were going to fight to preserve education. No one said, hey, if that $8 billion doesn't get stopped by these propositions, I'm going to do everything I can to make sure that it doesn't come out of education. And that's what I would want to hear from all of you here. Thank you.
Thank you.
you're a very good speaker. You're sincere. I really appreciate what you said on a number of different points. One thing on the accountability, what guarantees can I give you? It's a big question, and trying to make rules and laws in Sacramento that work all over this state and work here in San Diego too is pretty challenging. But one of the things, the idea of temporary taxes was to make us more accountable because they're going away. And by making them temporary, then hopefully you will see that we're either performing or not performing, and we'll have to suffer the consequences of no more new taxes. Finally, on how hard are we going to fight to stop these education cuts, I have to be honest with you. If all these measures go down on May 19th, education K through 12 is 40% of our state budget. I think cuts are going to fall there. I have to be honest with you. That's why I'm here tonight. There's only so many places you can look. If 40% of your pie is one thing and you have to cut another 10%, it's not going to come out of everywhere else but that. Well, I'll tell you, I don't like coming here and begging for tax dollars, believe me, But I'm trying to give you a heads up about what the consequences are if we don't get them. It's not a threat. It's like I'm trying to inform my constituents that there's a real downside to this. And why we're in this hole is a lot of different reasons. You talk about Sacramento sending money down for education and leaving it to the locals. Sacramento sends money down because way back in 1978 when Prop 13 was passed, property tax was flat. It could only go up 1 cent a year. So the local government was imploding, and California said, we'll backfill you on education, and you don't have to pay locally for education anymore. So county property tax, city property tax, which used to fund education, now stays flat and the state comes in. And with the state's money comes some of the state's rules. It's not a great system. It's a lot. It's probably not Terry Greer's from out of state. He could tell us about how other states handle it. But that's one of the reasons that Sacramento is so involved in local education. It would be better if it were all done locally, but because the money comes from Sacramento, the rules do too. So we will fight very, very, very hard, as we have. Actually, despite the cuts that the school board is suffering through, other programs, health programs, especially for the poor and children and the elderly, have been cut even more, on a percentage basis. So we are trying to save education. We know it's the future. Mm-hmm. And also the final thing on why our budget is so difficult, we don't do it on a 50% vote. We have to get 2/3 vote, and the Republicans, I'm a Democrat, so it's partisan in Sacramento, but our Republican legislators, by and large, do not want to fund education and other programs at the same level Democrats do. That's the way I see it. So you might want to have a Republican member come talk to you also.
Okay. Well, we were approaching 9 o'clock, so I'm just going to ask people to come on and speak. Thank you for waiting.
My name is Carl Yee. I'm a parent of a kindergartner at McKinley Elementary. We've heard some pretty big numbers that are pretty incomprehensible. I just want to leave you with some small numbers, which I think are very self-explanatory. At McKinley, we have 21 teachers this year. Next year, we have 16. Thank you.
Thank you. Yes, sir.
Hi, my name is Ken Levine. I'm the sheet metal coordinator for the apprenticeship program here in San Diego. I have been for the last 2 years. My position has allowed me to get very involved with San Diego Unified, the Grossmont School District, as well as the community colleges here in San Diego. I'd like the representatives to know here that San Diego Unified gets it. The school that we're at here tonight has a 98.6 graduation rate. That's money that does not have to be spent for bringing kids that are dropping out. San Diego Unified, I believe, has an 80% graduation rate. Correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe they have 16 schools that have career paths. That's keeping kids in school, money that does not have to be spent on special programs to bring them back to school. I would hope that in the future, we're looking at this crisis immediately. This crisis isn't going to go away tomorrow. It's not going to go away if this stuff's passed that we have to vote on. It's going to be with us for quite a while. Somebody spoke about more money spent on prisoners than on our children. A lot of those prisoners are children. And, how are we spending? We need to look at the big picture for everything. Why do we have all these special programs for kids that are in trouble when, if we did like construction tech's doing here, we have programs that keep them involved in school, keep them productive. There's a local business here in town, Taylor Guitars, that does millions of dollars a year.
That's right.
He got involved by having kids make guitars, and they're staying in school because they want to make a guitar.
Exactly.
Construction Tech Academy has something that interests kids. They combine their English, their math skills with learning about construction trades. Most of these kids are going to engineering schools. They're not coming to my apprenticeship program. They're far too intelligent. They're going to be business leaders and engineers and architects, but they're coming to our program to learn the hands-on part of their trade, and we're happy to have them there. I just think that, statewide, they should look at what San Diego Unified is doing. They have an extremely credible program. I think the board's doing a fantastic job with a very, very tough decision. I'm glad I don't have to make that decision.
Thank you very much.
That was my comment.
Thank you for waiting.
Good evening. I just wanted to say to our representatives here tonight that if we're going to cut, I want the cuts to come from services to illegal aliens and not from the schools. To our board, I would like to say I'm concerned about what's going to happen next year in the classroom as far as the atmosphere. And I see that discipline is laxed in the district and kids get away with a lot. And the kids who behave and are quiet, they suffer. So, and kids play the race card and the district bends over backwards. And I'm tired of the race card. But another thing that I'd like to see and that I really enjoy at the middle school level is the teachers use the websites. And they put the homework on there, and as parents, we can keep our kids accountable. But I'd like to see the lesson plan for the week ahead so that we could prepare and we can use the weekend. And also on the website, I'd like to see overheads with examples. I think that would be very helpful. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. Thank you for waiting.
We have in America and in California and San Diego representative government. And representative government means that we elect them or others to go to the Capitol and voice our concerns and our ideas. But when we get to the point where we need major reform, complete new things done, some things thrown out altogether, that requires us, the people, to get behind them and with them and go change it. Prop 13 didn't happen because the legislature did it. Prop 13, right or wrong, happened because people got up and went and made it happen. So since time is limited, right now we can work on these propositions. Call up everybody you know, family, neighbors, friends, and spend some time. It's only a few days. Today's the 1st, that's the 19th, so it's not the rest of your life. But what we could get on from there is to first put this in perspective. This is the worst economic downturn since the Depression 80 years ago. These people are not responsible for it. Neither is the state legislature. It is a worldwide problem that we're in for this last few years. So let's make sure we get our perspective squared away. And what are we going to do if the things doesn't pass, or even if they do? The federal government has signaled, President Obama, that they are interested in innovation, creative change. All of the things that we have done over the years, some of them have gotten stale. We got to change. We got to try something different. And if it doesn't work, throw it out and try something else. So maybe if we concentrate and go out to the schools, these people aren't here tonight because they got laid off. And whatever gas they got left, they got to go to work or go look for a job. Their houses are 6 months behind or in foreclosure. That's why they're not here. If you go to those schools, though, they're there. And we need to get with them and figure out some real serious, innovative things to try something different. And the federal government will love to see that, because it won't only be something for San Diego. They can use that example in other parts of the country. We can get a lot of money. It's not going to solve this problem. Finally, the real problem is 2/3. This is a democracy. 2/3 is tyranny. That's worse than what's going on with some of these dictators, where a few people can hold the whole state of California hostage. Democracy means that we get there, we argue, we debate, and all of us have to exercise a little flexibility from time to time. That thing has to change, and it won't change unless we, the people, go make it change. Another thing, the reapportionment last time. Democrats and Republicans didn't want to fight it out, so they said, let's make everybody safe. Well, I understand the frustration. The fact is, by making everybody safe, all legislators get elected or unelected in their primaries. What does that mean? That means they cannot negotiate anything. They can't find any middle ground, because the extremes in their party are going to keep them extreme. That has to change. And I understand the panic of term limits, what brought that about, but we got to stop knee-jerking when we get in trouble and do something stupid. And that's what that was, because we was mad with politicians. You can't have a state with 35 million people, a couple of $100 billion when you put all the different funds together, and expect somebody to go and make policy about that, budget or otherwise, and they're only there 6 years. You know, geniuses couldn't do it that fast. So we got to face reality. Term limits is crazy. The term limits we need is election day. And if we sit up as active people, get informed, and fulfill our civic responsibility, that's the best term limits in the world. The real solution is get rid of term limits, get reapportionment the way it's been done, in a way where we can have competitive districts where legislators in both parties got to appeal to everybody, not just a narrow, slim, and then the 2/3 majority. That's the select. But right now, pass these propositions, and let's get on with some real change at the district level. I mean, at the school level.
Thank you. Thank you for waiting, please.
Hi, I'm Cecilia Kuma. I run an organization called Playwrights Project. We teach arts education in the schools. Thank you. There are other arts organizations here who are concerned about innovation and creativity. We believe that is an important element in solving these problems, but it's also extremely important to 21st century learning for our students. And I just hope that you will consider in all these cuts, that you please do not cut the VAPA department, Visual and Performing Arts department, in its entirety, and cut all of these arts programs that are so essential to teaching students in different ways about the important things like creativity, like problem solving, working together. So I just want to encourage you to support the arts in there.
Thank you very much. Yes, sir. Thank you.
Good evening. I'm David Pletner. I'm here on behalf of the San Diego Arts and Culture Coalition. And like the previous speaker, we're here to advocate on behalf of arts education in the budget deliberations. Board Member Evans pointed out earlier that one of the many purposes of tonight's meeting is to learn more about the impacts of potential cuts. We wanted to point out that the VAPA budget, the money that is spent in the district office on the visual and performing arts staff and infrastructure, is highly leveraged. This fact hasn't been brought out in any of the discussions that we're aware of. And when I say highly leveraged, I mean that one portion of the cuts in Plan B call for $3.2 million in eliminating positions and other expenses related to the VAPA department at the district level. This expenditure allows for arts providers in the community, arts and cultural organizations, teaching artists, to provide programs in the schools that far exceed the value of that $3.2 million. In other words, you take away the $3.2 million, you lose substantially more than $3.2 million in services that are provided by philanthropists and arts professionals in the community. In addition to that loss, I would say, we've talked about, okay, if you have to cut, what are the plans for rebuilding when the economy turns around? I would say that even if you cut the VAPA department and restore it 2 or 3 years from now, the donor relationships, the capacity, the educational capacity in the arts organizations has been substantially disrupted and perhaps, if not entirely lost. Not something you can just restore by restoring a district position. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you very much, and thank you for waiting.
My name is Marion Charay, and I come here as the Executive Director of Classics for Kids, another arts organization that is putting into your students, San Diego Unified students, several $100,000 of money that we have raised through fundraisers, through donors, through all kinds of activities to benefit arts education for San Diego's kids. We have a lot to offer. The VAPA department has been totally amazing, helping us to leverage our programs. We trained more than 400 second grade teachers this year on standards-based ways to use music and the arts as an entry point into a variety of curriculum, as well as teaching children about music. We have a professional orchestra. It culminates in reading, writing, and all kinds of activities that is making learning palatable for some of the children that find it so very difficult. The VAPA department has done an incredible job. I beg you, please do not make that cut. And I have asked for a meeting to find out how the arts organizations can partner in even a better way and use our resources to better benefit the students, and that request was respectfully declined. Thank you.
Okay. Yes, ma'am. Thank you for waiting.
My name is Victoria Saunders. I grew up in the San Diego Unified School District. My father was an art teacher for his entire career with San Diego Unified. My mother started the Magnet Bus program back in the 70s. So I have a history here. My question is, if you eliminate the VAPA department, and most of the VAPA department is comprised of salaries for teachers, and you're not pink-slipping teachers or trying to maintain teacher positions, how does elimination of the department actually save the city schools money?
Okay. Good question. And we'll look into that one. Superintendent? Someone wants to answer it right now, but I don't know if anybody has the exact answer for you right now.
Can I be sure that somebody will get back to me on that?
No, yes, well, he's right here. He got you.
I'll come down to see you as soon as we're finished. Okay.
Okay. There you go. Okay. All right.
Alrighty, is that
okay?
Wrapping it up?
Give it to me at the end.
And that's what he said. He's going to come down and yes.
For a really long time.
Okay. All right. While you. Thank you. Yes, sir.
Hi, I'm Wade Seeley, and
this is the last one, right?
This is the last one. Yes.
I hope I make it good. So, unlike her, I'm not from San Diego, but I grew up in a place in Ohio where the school system and community is much simpler than it is here. So I recognize that it's quite a difficult puzzle that all of you have to work with. But, and my son's in second grade. I have to admit, I sort of had a personal hope that I wouldn't sort of feel like I needed to get so involved in school board activities. But now he's in second grade only, and twice this week I've been to meetings. So I guess I'm sort of in now. And referring to Tuesday night's meeting that I attended, I heard a lot of passion, which I can see. Passion from the community is sort of apparently a necessary ingredient in the push-pull of things, and so I was quite impressed with what the community offered. But in terms of sort of breakthrough ideas that night, I only heard one, and I wanted to follow up, and that was Mr. DeBeck making a reference to buying school books for 10 cents on the dollar, and then more specifically saying some books that might cost $50 could be purchased for $1, and that's 2 cents on the dollar. And for as long as I can remember, 30 years, I've just been furious about the whole textbook market, and the only reason that people can sell, any marketplace can sell things on a consistent basis for seemingly high prices is because they can. Mm-hmm. So just like in the marketplace for prescription drugs, the buy side has to get more creative, and it seems to me that then the sell side wouldn't be able to charge such ridiculous prices. School books may change a little bit here and there, but over time they don't change a lot. Certainly for certain topics they don't. So hearing about books that are used for 7 years, 180 days a year times 7 years is a lot of touching of a book. But if you can buy books for 10 cents on the dollar or 2 cents on the dollar, a year or two
That was
old,
the last one.
a year or two after they were first published, you could buy new books every year and spend a lot less than buying one book every 7 years. So I hope that maybe our school district can be one of the pioneers in pursuing that way of buying things. And again, as I said, that's the only particularly breakthrough idea I heard Tuesday night. So we got to get a lot more imaginative than we have been, and I know it's difficult. So I guess there's another thought I have, but I've lost track of it, so I'll just let it go with that.
I agree. That was the last speaker. I want to thank you all for coming. I do want you to go out and share. We're going to be around, so if you're going to talk to us afterwards, that'll be fine. And for those of you that also want to help us increase our revenue, a 1% increase each time our students are in school, so make sure that people are bringing their students to school. Thank you very much. Thank you.